I watched my mother-in-law, a woman who once told me I wasn't aristocratic enough to carry her family name, sobbing on my front porch. The rain was pounding down, soaking her expensive coat, which I knew for a fact was bought on credit she could no longer pay. Beside her, my father-in-law, a man who hadn't looked me in the eye for a decade, was staring at his shoes, clutching a single, pathetic suitcase. They wanted in. They wanted forgiveness. They wanted the guest wing of the 5-bedroom house I built from the ground up. I looked at my husband, Mark. His jaw was tight, a muscle jumping in his cheek. He looked at them, then he looked at me. The silence stretched out, heavy and suffocating, interrupted only by the thunder rolling overhead. I took a deep breath, tasted the metallic tang of adrenaline in my mouth, and reached for the door handle. But I didn't open it wider. I started to close it. "Please," my mother-in-law wailed, her voice cracking. "We have nowhere else to go. We're family." I paused, looking her dead in the eye. "Family," I whispered, letting the word hang there. Funny you should use that word. And then I shut the door. But before I tell you what happened in the aftermath of that decision and how the entire family is now blowing up my phone calling me a monster, I need to take you back 12 years. Because to understand why I left 2 elderly people out in the rain, you need to understand exactly what they did to us when we were the ones begging. If you love stories about karma and well-deserved revenge, do me a favor and hit that like button, and let me know in the comments. Have you ever had to cut off a toxic family member? Let's go back to 2012. I was 23, and Mark was 24. We had just gotten married, much to the disapproval of his parents, Linda and Robert. Linda and Robert were old money, or at least they pretended to be. They were the type of people who judged your worth by the label on your handbag and the zip code of your upbringing. I grew up in foster care. I put myself through community college waiting tables. To them, I was absolute trash. They made sure I knew it too. At our wedding, Linda actually wore white, a white floor-length gown. When I confronted her, she smirked and said, "Well, someone needs to look pure today, dear." I should have slapped her then, but I didn't. I was young, insecure, and I just wanted them to love me. 6 months after the wedding, disaster struck. Mark was working at a startup that went under overnight. No severance, no warning. 2 days later, the engine in my beat-up Honda Civic blew. We had drained our small savings on the wedding, which, by the way, Linda and Robert promised to pay for, then pulled their funding the week before, claiming they didn't agree with the floral arrangements. We had to pay for it all on credit cards. We were drowning. We couldn't make rent. We couldn't buy groceries. We were staring down the barrel of eviction. We swallowed our pride. We put on our best clothes, drove our rental car over to Linda and Robert's massive estate, and sat in their living room. I remember the smell of that room. Lilies and old furniture polish. It smelled like money. Mark explained the situation. He didn't ask for a handout. He asked for a loan. A specific amount with a repayment plan. Or failing that, could we stay in their pool house for 2 months while we got back on our feet? Robert laughed. He actually laughed. He took a sip of his scotch, looked at Mark, and said, "We aren't a bank, son, and we certainly aren't a homeless shelter." "But Dad," Mark said, his voice trembling, "we're going to be on the street, literally. We have 3 days to vacate our apartment." Linda chimed in then, examining her manicured nails. She didn't even look at us. "Well, maybe this is a good lesson for you. You married that girl against our advice. You chose a low-class life. You can deal with low-class problems. Sink or swim." I felt tears streaming down my face. "Please," I begged, "just a place to sleep. I'll clean the house, I'll do the gardening, anything." Linda looked at me with pure disgust. "I don't want you in my house," she sneered. "I don't want you touching my things. You'll figure it out, or you won't." They ushered us out. As the heavy oak door clicked shut behind us, I heard them laughing. That night, we slept in the car. For the next 4 months, we lived a nightmare. We couch-surfed with friends until we overstayed our welcomes. We spent nights in a 24-hour diner, nursing a single cup of coffee just to stay out of the cold. We showered at a cheap gym. I remember one specific night. It was Christmas Eve. We were huddled in the backseat of the car, sharing a stale sandwich. My phone buzzed. It was a Facebook notification. Linda had tagged Mark in a photo. It was a picture of them in Hawaii. They were holding tropical drinks, smiling at the camera. The caption read, "Spending our hard-earned money on us. #paradise. #no freeloaders." Something inside me broke that night, but it wasn't a break that made me weak. It was a break that let the light in, a cold, sharp, blinding light of determination. I looked at Mark, whose eyes were hollow and tired, and I grabbed his hand. "We are going to make it," I said, my voice shaking with rage. "And when we do, they will never, ever hear from us again." And that's exactly what we did. It took 10 years of grinding. Mark got into coding, self-taught, working off free Wi-Fi in the library. I started a small consulting business, helping local shops organize their finances. We barely slept, we ate rice and beans, we saved every single penny. By year 3, we had a small apartment. By year 5, Mark was a senior developer and I had 3 employees. By year 8, we were millionaires. I'm not saying that to brag. I'm telling you this to show you the work it took. We built a life out of the ashes of their rejection. We built a beautiful home on 4 acres. We have a pool, we have a guest wing, we have everything they thought we'd never have. And in all that time, we maintained strict low contact. We saw them at funerals or unavoidable family weddings. We were polite, distant, and cold. They noticed our success, of course. Suddenly, Linda wanted to do lunch. Robert wanted to talk investment strategies with Mark. We declined, every single time. "Sorry, busy working, you know how it is." I don't think they ever understood that we were mocking them. They were too narcissistic to get it. Then came the crash. About 6 months ago, the grapevine, aka Mark's gossipy sister Sarah, started buzzing. Linda and Robert had made some bad moves, very bad moves. Robert had retired early, thinking his pension was untouchable. Then he got involved in some crypto scam he saw on Facebook. He leveraged the house, he leveraged his classic cars, he lost it all. At the same time, Linda's spending never slowed down. She was still buying designer clothes, still booking vacations, putting it all on credit cards that Robert couldn't pay off. The house of cards collapsed. Last month, the bank foreclosed on their estate. The big, beautiful house where they mocked us, gone. Sarah called us in a panic. "They have nowhere to go," she cried. "They're being evicted on Friday. I can't take them. I have 3 kids in a 2-bedroom apartment. You guys have that massive house. You have the room." Mark put the phone on speaker. "What exactly are you asking, Sarah?" "I'm asking you to take in Mom and Dad, just until they get their pension sorted. Just for a few months." Mark looked at me. His eyes were hard. "They told us to sink or swim, Sarah, remember?" "That was years ago," she shrieked. "You can't hold a grudge forever. They're old. They're your parents." "I'll think about it," Mark said, and hung up. He didn't think about it. We poured a glass of wine and sat in silence. We didn't even need to discuss it. The answer was no. But here is where the audacity truly shines. We never called them back to offer a place, so they assumed. Yesterday, in the middle of a torrential downpour, a cab pulled up to our gate. The driver buzzed the intercom. "I have your parents here," he said. They hadn't even asked. They just showed up. I watched on the security camera as they unloaded their bags. They looked small, defeated. Part of me, the part that was once a scared foster kid wanting approval, felt a twinge of pity. But then I remembered the photo from Hawaii. I remembered the smell of the car we slept in. I remembered Linda calling me low-class trash. I walked to the front door. Mark was right behind me. I opened it, and that brings us back to the start. "Please," my mother-in-law wailed, her voice cracking. "We have nowhere else to go. We're family." I paused, looking her dead in the eye. "Family?" I whispered, letting the word hang there. Funny you should use that word. And then I shut the door. The knocking started instantly, first polite, then frantic. "Mark," he yelled through the wood. "Mark, open this door. This is your father. You ungrateful little brat, open this door." Mark leaned his forehead against the heavy wood of the door. He wasn't crying, he was breathing. Deep, steady breaths. He unlocked the door and opened it one more time. They grew quiet, expecting him to usher them in. Robert straightened his wet collar, trying to regain some dignity. "That's better," he huffed. "Now get the boy to bring in the bags." "No," Mark said. His voice was calm, terrifyingly calm. "Excuse me?" Robert sputtered. "You aren't coming in," Mark said. "You aren't staying here. Not for a night, not for an hour. You are not welcome in this house." "But we're destitute," Linda screamed, her mascara running down her face. "We lost everything, Mark. How can you do this?" "Do you remember 2012? Mark asked softly. They froze. "Do you remember the sink or swim speech?" Mark continued. "Do you remember laughing as we walked out? Because I do. I remember it every single day."
That was tough love, Robert shouted. "We made you who you are." "No," I stepped forward, standing beside my husband. "You didn't make us. You broke us. We built ourselves back up despite you. And frankly, this sounds like a specific financial planning failure on your part. Maybe you should have saved for a rainy day." I gestured to the storm around them. Literally. "You are evil," Linda hissed at me. "You poisoned him against us." "Get off my property," Mark said. "I'm calling an Uber for you. It's going to the Motel 6 on the interstate. I've paid for 3 nights. After that, you'll have to figure it out. You're adults. Sink or swim." We closed the door. We locked it. We watched on the monitor as the Uber arrived 10 minutes later. They got in, still screaming at the house, cursing us to hell. Since then, it's been absolute chaos.
Sarah is blowing up our phones, calling us abusers. My Facebook inbox is full of messages from distant cousins I haven't seen in 20 years, telling me I'm going to hell for abandoning the elderly. Mark has been quiet. He spent a long time sitting by the window, watching the rain stop. An hour ago, he looked at me and said, "I thought I would feel guilty. I really thought I would." "And do you?" I asked, terrified of the answer. He smiled, and it was the most genuine smile I've seen in weeks. "No, I feel free." But now, reading the messages from the family, a tiny voice of doubt is creeping in. Not because I care about them, but because society tells us we owe our parents everything, no matter what. So I have to ask you guys, am I the a-hole for leaving my in-laws out in the rain and refusing to let them live in the mansion I built after they left me homeless 10 years ago? Let me know what you would have done in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this story of petty revenge, make sure to subscribe. You won't believe the update I have coming next week about what Sarah tried to do to our business.